G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. On my mobile phone, where I have no post comment button, so to reply to video comments, I'm making a video reply to comments. In this case, to the comments on Tony Abbott's government by Slogan, if pigs had wings, they'd be pigeons. First in was McNuts 2. And two-part comment, basically fairly humorous, suggesting that pigeons are not real birds. I'm guessing, McNuts, you must live somewhere where you've got a problem with feral pigeons in a city. I know a lot of people get really cranky with pigeons in cities. They call them rats with wings. And yeah, basically you like the idea of a pigeon as a metaphor for right-wing, hardcore, neo-Nazi type politicians. So yeah, that's cool. I can dig that. Thanks for the comment, mate. Then we have to go twirling down 18 hours ago. I think there was someone at 19 hours. 19 hours ago. Cram 2554. I think the capital TPTB would like a World War III. That would be great if I understood what TPTB means. In the words of the famous primary school teacher, ULA, which in brackets use less abbreviations. So it's 19 hours ago. Middlesbrough 44, 18 hours ago. Now you know how we feel here in England. We're full of migrants. Now they get everything provided for free. England is soon going to be an Islamic country. Well, really? I guess that's because of Muslims coming in from Pakistan, Bangladesh perhaps. That would be a downstream consequence of England backing out of India, which was a downstream consequence of England moving into India, which was a downstream consequence of a fairly aggressive mercantile policy, where your English merchant would show up on the Indian coastline in a boat full of British manufactured goods and go out and sell them in a market economy where they didn't have such factories. And when the locals got cranky, he called for the British Navy or the British Army to bail him out of whatever jail he was incarcerated in. And before the British government recognised it, they were pretty much in possession of India. They had this giant friggin' empire. And then they backed out and ran away. And they said that anybody who was, a citizen of the empire had pretty much the right of return to the English homeland. It was really good publicity back in the days, and it served the British government's ends to say it, but that means there's an awful lot of people who've been brought up thinking that because they lived in Barbados or somewhere, that was a British Commonwealth country and they were as good as any other British Commonwealth citizen. Me, I'm a post-colonial neo-domino, I suppose. I live in a Commonwealth dominion, so I must be a domino. I'm personally not gravely threatened by Muslims in Australia. Last time the Muslims actually took up arms against the Australian civilian population was New Year's Day 1915, when a halal butcher and an ice cream salesman got two rifles in the ice cream van and they shot up the New Year's Day picnic train out of Broken Hill. Right? Very famous Battle of White Hill or Silver Hill, Battle of Silver Hill, I think. About 7 people died. Maybe another 10 or 11 were wounded. And it was because of that that Australia felt they were kind of justified in attacking Turkey, because Turkey was an Islamic country and these two characters had decided that they were part of the Islamic Caliphate, and the Ottoman Empire was at war with the British Empire, therefore it was their duty to go to war against citizens of the empire. But since then, no, the Muslims in Australia have been pretty well behaved. They started coming out here as camel caravaneers to get through the deserts where horses and cattle, bullocks towing wagons used to die. So Australia has a long, proud history of Muslim integration. No, I'm just pissed off at the government and the antics of the government. And I don't think Australia's becoming Muslim so much as the Christians are dying out, and a lot of people are, well, they're agnostic, or they're perhaps New Age pagan. And then we have Ninigeo hyibhi. It's kind of scary. The Australian population is about 20 million. The population of Indonesia and surrounding areas is 200 million. Australia may not have the finances to help at the moment. It's just a sad situation, hurled into chaos by beloved history. Yeah, mate, it's a bit like that. Tony Abbott exhibits what they call the Peter principle, where somebody gets promoted one level of responsibility above their demonstrated competence and ability to do the job. And he can't see anything wrong with a nation of transplanted Europeans spying on the surrounding Asiatic governments, because he's a white supremacist. He was some years in a Catholic seminary before he went on a Rhodes Scholarship to study law in Oxford or Cambridge or somewhere. It's not that he's unintelligent, it's just that he's been raised on bullshit. And it's convenient for him to exhibit illuminated tunnel vision, studied ignorance. He doesn't know anything that he doesn't want to know because he hasn't looked into it, because he knows that it's distasteful to his prejudices. Then we have Space Child 59. The land of Australia is stolen by white settlers from the Aboriginal Australians. White guys like Abbott should watch the fuck out that they are really doing the best for the people and therefore for the planet. What I heard from you, I conclude that the elite in Australia is completely fucked and they are fucking the rest of us. When it comes that far, I guess revolution is the answer. Well, Space Child, the problem with revolution is that to militarily defeat somebody, you have to become a bigger arsehole than they are. I think this is a case of be the change you want to see. If you don't like internecine incestuous viciousness and selfish greediness, then just don't indulge in it and speak out against it and do something that makes sense instead. But revolution, no, this is the kind of country where they read the Riot Act at you, and then, the police farces and the army reserves and the military, they have much, much heavier weapons than the citizenry, and they've been raised on a diet of patriotic obedience. It's a really bad idea to take them on in a fight, because they'll grind you to a fucking hamburger and then want a medal afterwards, and they'll probably get the medal. So no, revolution's not a good idea. We've just got to sort of segregate ourselves into the low impact, low carbon emission people who just don't want to play that whole game, and the people who are true believers in Tony Abbott's onward and upward back to the 1950s mentality, and put a bit of distance between the good guys and the bad guys and watch the lightning strikes hammer the arsehole out of the bad guys. That's my plan. I can't see anything. Like, I'm not going to go out there and physically overpower anybody and force them to take up my way of looking at the world. It's not my job to do that. If anything, it's the Creator's job to convince the fucking idiots to pay more attention to what's going on. Like, I'm convinced, I understand. But I'm not going to run around and, force people at gunpoint to think like I do, because that ain't going to work. It'll just turn me into an arsehole, and there's plenty of them on the planet already. I think what the planet needs is people who are not living like arseholes. Then we have Causa Sui. I'm half Lebanese. I had heard some time ago that Australia has a sizable Lebanese population. I only recently found out that they are also arguably the most hated population in the country. Sad. Well, I think it'd be drawing a long bow to say that the Lebanese are the most hated population in the country. I think at the moment there's a perception that Lebanese, Croatians, Yugoslavs, pretty much, yeah, Bosnians, Macedonians, a lot of them came to Australia, did the trick of forming cliques or almost ghettos in the suburbs so that they could comfort and sustain each other by talking to somebody who had shared experience and common language and understood where they were from and all the rest of it. But it kind of meant that their kids didn't integrate particularly well, and the kids who didn't integrate well have gravitated towards forming gangs. Some of them are outlaw motorcycle gangs. There's one that I've heard of that doesn't even have motorcycles, but they dress up, you know, just like a motorcycle gang and get around in cars or taxis or on foot. That was all happening around about the same time that Johnny Howard took away the semi-automatic long arms from the Australian citizen shooter. Now he did that because a couple of people had done public shootings where they used a thing called an SKS, which is a Chinese assault rifle, 10-round semi-automatic with a folding spike bayonet. With military ammunition, yeah, you can probably hit somebody at about 100 metres. If you put hunting ammunition in it, it damages the round while loading it so that it becomes wildly inaccurate, and you can't hit a wash tub at 25 feet with hunting ammunition. That's an important distinction because military ammunition is designed to conform with the Geneva Convention to go in one side and out the other. Give you a really good chance of surviving to get a medal. Also tie up 4 other people looking after you once you become a battlefield casualty. Hunting ammunition is designed to quickly and cleanly kill the target. So with the SKS you couldn't put soft nose ammunition in them. It meant that they weren't particularly accurate, and if you did hit anybody they got a good chance of living. When they went off the market it meant your average hothead, if they got out of high school with a clean record, once upon a time they could go and get a gun licence, get an SKS, a box of bullets, go 10 miles out of town, shoot the shit out of some tin cans, get it all out of their system, go home, polish their death machine, but it was too big to take to the dance. To satisfy the market, the black market in the cities, there was a bunch of crooked customs agents and there was another bunch of crooked post office workers, and they were importing semi-automatic handguns and selling them to the disaffected young teenagers who wanted to have a psychological penis extender, and they couldn't get an SKS and hide it under their bed, so they got themselves a fucking Glock or something. And they started shooting up each other's houses over arguments, over, you know, drugs, cars, wheel nuts, whatever. And a whole bunch of them have got unpronounceable Czechoslovakian, Croatian, Yugoslavian names, or they've got Lebanese names. So yeah, the Lebanese are copping some bad press in Australia at the moment. But I think an awful lot of Aborigines would put the case that they get discriminated against worse than any other minority group in Australia, and that's really fucking annoying because, you know, this is Aboriginal land. Traditionally, any mob of recent migrants gets socially excluded and blamed for the ills of society until they assimilate, and it takes a generation or two. You know, nobody worries about Vietnamese gangs anymore, but 20 years ago there was a lot of, what do they call them, shock jock chatter about Vietnamese gangs. Well, yeah, all right, now they're talking about Lebanese gangs. And outlaw motorcycle gangs are the big flavour of the month. Then we got VB Ed, who says, in the recent election a few months back, the Liberals won the election handsomely. Get over it. Yeah, Ed, you're right. And I am over it. But I'm not over the fact that being in government carries certain responsibilities. I'm not over the fact that I expect my government to work to maintain the fabric of society, not to dismantle the fabric of society in the interests of boosting the economy, because Australia had a really pleasant society when I was a kid. It peaked in about 1978 and it's been downhill all the way, and it's not just my view that that's what's happened. I read an article in a New Scientist magazine where somebody went out and measured the individual situations, access to clean water, clean air, clean food, leisure time, how much they had to work, what they got paid for it, how much spare money they had. And industrial deficit financed civilization peaked in 1978, and ever since then people have been working harder and getting less for it globally, and the third world's even worse off. So yeah, I expect my government to behave responsibly. I don't expect them to ponce around blowing minor indiscretions into major international incidents. I mean, since I made the movie yesterday, yeah, the Indonesians have broken off all military and intelligence ties, and they're now talking about expelling Australian diplomats. They're not asking Tony Abbott to admit that he did this, unless he actually is doing it now. They're saying that he needs to apologise along the lines of, if this happened, it is not happening now and it will not happen in the future. That's what he needs to do. He's not doing it. As for the global warming thing, all the environmental lobby walked out of the Warsaw Conference because they say none of the governments of the world are taking it seriously. Everybody is following Tony Abbott down the denialist track. Oh, we can't do that because the economy's not in this. Oh, we can't do that. Oh, we're just going to... The atmospheric heat engine doesn't give a rat's ass for the political ideology that the market is supreme. It's going to bust your social infrastructure. And the countries that are being hit by the extreme weather events are talking about suing. In the international court, they're talking about suing the developed Western world, each nation individually for their share of the damage. So you work out what 4.5% of the damage of the Filipino super typhoon was a week ago, fortnight ago, and Australia's going to be stuck with maybe 4.5% of that bill because we pump out 4.5% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions with our coal and our gas exports. We are responsible for 4.5% of the infrastructure damage that's being done by the extreme weather events. Get your head around that one and manage that risk with an insurance policy, Ed. Get over it. It's real. It's happening. And then there's the end credits Aviation Channel 2 hours ago. If pigs had wings, we'd give them a run for their money, eh, Biggles? Cheers, mate. A fella called Andrew Rains. Yeah, no worries, Andrew. Good point. In fact, just as a special treat for you, I'm going to post a movie wherein I read from Winged Victory, which I'm sure you will recognise as one of the premier classic novels on the nature of the air war and of life in general. First published in 1934, and what it has to say about electioneering and advertising and the wickedness of foreigners and the evils of excessive competition, you could swear he was writing for this week, talking about Tony Abbott and his response to Indonesia and the world. Anyway, them's my replies to the comments on the thread of yesterday's major movie. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Have a good one, fellas. Ciao.